Great show today. I'm super excited today to have Jason Starbuck with me. We're going to chat about all kinds of cool entrepreneur things today. Jason's been doing this since the early 2000s. He's got a lot of projects under his belt, a lot of web projects, tons of lead generation he's done. He's built a huge team with a call center and a whole bunch of other things. So today we're going to dive in, learn all about what he's doing, and how he got there. So welcome, Jason. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Man, how you doing?
I'm doing awesome. I'm doing really good.
I was doing a lot of thinking before I got on the show, and I was like, and it works out perfectly because you just said some things that I've done in my past, and not all of them are really easy, but I thought I had a good metaphor for today. So I like to travel, and I've gone to Japan, and I picked up this this knife here, and the origin of this is actually the makers. They used to make samurai swords, and now they make knives because they don't really fight anymore. But it reminded me because I've been trying to clean this thing up and I'm getting cut everywhere. And it reminded me that it's so important just to sharpen the blade in whatever you do, because you can do it with less effort. And I just thought that was a really cool analogy. When I was looking at it, I was like, these knives not always polish the best, but the way the blades are sharp and the way that they've been created, I thought that was a good metaphor for the way she probably handle business.
Yeah, I love that. That's really cool. And I love the props, man. I love it. That's yeah, I imagine there's not a huge demand for samurai swords these days, and cleavers and other types of instruments are probably a lot more important.
Yeah.
So let's go back a few years. I really want to talk about how you got started in this. I know you've built a lot, and I've looked at your new venture and what you're focused on there, and I think that's kind of it took you a bit to get there. So let's kind of go back in time, and how did you kind of get started with getting on the internet, and going, this is the model. I'm going to use the internet. I'm going to start kind of diving into that. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's a really good story, actually. So I was working for Harley Davidson at the time. And I live in Southern California, and I live about an hour and some change in a little town called Riverside. And now I live in San Diego now, but I was about an hour and something from there. And working for Harley, I also surfed. And so I pulled up Surfer Magazine, and I pulled it up, and there was this little brand called Affliction. And it was really popular back then in the fight world and things like that. And I looked at it and I went, wait a minute, I know somebody that's selling some stuff online. I was like, I think they're selling some motorcycle parts online or something. I was like, this is kind of cool. So I was like, what the heck is this? And so I basically had the guy come in, and I said, hey man, can I just ask you a couple questions? He's like, yeah, why don't you come over to my office? And he had this 8,000 square foot facility where he was shipping. He was probably doing about $120,000 a month out of it. This is early 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
This is like, during the time where like, what's this Amazon? You're just selling some books, And
eBay was the main site.
eBay was fire. I sold so much on eBay. Yeah. But what happened was that I then made some relationships in what I call the core industry, which would be like core fashion, which would be like skate, early 20s, those kind of like extreme sports, right?
Yeah.
So during that time, I just kind of knew a bunch of people. So I said, hey, you know what? Can I get a connection here? And so I kind of started that, and I was doing about 15 grand a month. And lo and behold, the guy was like, I think you're the only guy that actually could take my business over. Do you want to buy it?
Oh, wow.
Like, why are you asking? Why me? He's like, well, what you did with what I told you was pretty cool. So I said, well, let me look at it. Long story short, negotiated with him, bought his business, and then took that to, X amount of dollars. So that was my kind of kick into the internet, was like everybody basically saying, Jason, excuse my French, but what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah. What is this internet thing, right? those early
Everybody
days.
thought it was yeah. I mean, I'm riding hard. I mean, just think of the story, right? I'm riding Harleys at night, and then at the very wee end of the night, I go back and I'm like processing these orders, and people are like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I don't know either.
I don't know either, but it's working. And you know what? I'm having
I don't know, but they're sending me money.
Those early days were very interesting. Hey, and so what were you building on? Like, what did you kind of like, what kind of tools were you using back in the day? Do you even remember?
Yeah, I do. It originated, WordPress wasn't even really a thing yet. It wasn't there. So You had a couple, actually, if you go back a little bit, I kind of started on the little geek world. I went into the car business, and then I found Act. Do you remember Act?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I created my own CRM before Salesforce and everything with Act at the dealership. So I was kind of in this tinkering kind of world, you know? But I think that as I went through that process, the only platform that made sense, unless it was more of something that was like somebody really built out, which was mean more junk really, was Yahoo had a really good platform.
Yeah, I remember
Yahoo
that.
stores. And I sold so much money on Yahoo stores, but you still had to program the HTML. So
Yeah.
you still are in a position where, for example, if you create your one page, anybody's listening to this, and I want to create an e-commerce store that has these on here, and I have a homepage, I've got to replicate everything from this page to this page with privacy policy at the end, with the homepage again. You literally have to build every single page so that you have a website. And then if you click on things, other parts of the website weren't coherent. And that was one thing that kind of WordPress did. They kind of came in and they said, look, if we make a couple changes, we can kind of change it across the platform. And then that changed, obviously the evolution, right?
Yeah, I remember those early days when WordPress was just coming out, that whole, like you said, the whole concept of like navigations, as a very simple thing of like global navigations, like the pain we used to have to go through in the early days of the internet trying to build out websites. So, now you just tell Chat GPT to do it, and, it's almost a joke, but that's awesome. And I think, so you went into agency business again. I think that they learned about. Let's talk a bit about that. So, what made you kind of jump into the agency world? I know a lot of people. It's a great place to start off. There's still so much demand out there. The world's always changing. The world of marketing is always changing, and I think there's just always a huge demand for that. So, what kind of made that shift, and what got you kind of starting in that business model?
During that time, and thanks for asking. You go through these things, and if anybody's watching this on business, is watching this is in business. It's you have some crashes and some burns, and you have some stings, and you get some kicked in the face, and it doesn't feel good, like at all, and you're lost, and you don't know where you're at, and you could probably hear it by the way I'm saying it. I could relive it right now. And during the e-commerce time, I had partners, and they had more of an idea of kind of accounting and wanted to do so. And I said, look, I don't think this is going to go away. And so it was raise a bunch of money, millions and millions of dollars, as the e-com and everybody's dropping, basically at the time, e-com is kind of the same thing with the banking system right now. It's like, are we going to wipe everything out? Everybody really thought there could have been some crazy stuff. And so from then I said, I'm going to make a change at my time in my life. And I had somebody ask me at a jewelry store, they said, hey, do you think you can help me? I was like, I don't know, I can help you, but I know more than you, I guess. And so I started I'll help you a little bit. And then another person, hey, can you help me? And, hey, can you help me? And it kind of just evolved into kind of help. And then I created an agency. And then I realized at that time, and this kind of goes into my whole story. I don't know if you want me to just really dive into what kind of one of the transitions that I think is fairly interesting. But what ended up happening was that I was living in San Diego, and the e-commerce businesses it's like 70% drop. You don't know what you're going to do. SEO every single other week, it was like, am I getting my reciprocal links from, college? And, we were deep into it. I was number 2 in the term Oakley sunglasses.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah. Oh, wow.
I'm in the game. You know what I mean?
Totally.
I'm in the game. Like,
that's not an easy feat.
No. And everybody knows kind of like if I still own that keyword right now, I wouldn't. I probably would, but there's a lot of different stuff.
Yeah.
But what I realized, I was like, this would be kind of cool. I realized that there's an entire world of people that need to transition. And if I could put myself in that position, then I could be the person they come to. So I started an agency, kind of got it up and running. But then I don't know if you ever been up to Sacramento?
Years ago. Yeah, I've been there. I'm not super familiar. I was a tourist, not a traveler, if you know what I mean.
You kind of came in, paid the taxes, and left,
Yeah, exactly. I was there for work many years ago.
Well, the story's not in Sacramento, but one day I had a Harley and I have a road glide, kind of one of those longer rides you could go for a long time. And I get on my bike and I take off, and there's the Grapevine, and the Grapevine's known for just this big, huge road, and it gets all the way at the top. One pro tip: like get gas before you head up the hill, because like
Yeah.
everybody's on the side of the road, no gas. So you get all the way up there, and then you get off, and it starts to kind of tear over. I always like to go around 4 a.m. I've done this multiple times, about an 9 hour trip, Sacramento, whatever.
Nice.
And as I'm coming down, one of my favorite things I've ever had is that on the motorcycle, you get all your senses. And I'm getting like, it's like vanilla hitting your body, because there's pistachios, there's nuts, there's just all that stuff coming down the Grapevine. And it's so beautiful. And because you're on a motorcycle, it's like thick air, it's like, I don't know how to explain it. It's like vanilla on your body.
Yeah.
And so it's just kind of a little bit of feeling. And it's my favorite time to go. Sun's come up, but that day was different. And I kept telling myself, I'm always on the move. I'm falling apart. I mean, I'm a thin guy. I've always been active, but I'm out of shape. And I was like, I'm always on the move. And I was like, there's got to be other people that were probably like me. Like, they can't just be me like this. And so it started a journey where I came back in about 10 days. I told my friends and all of them, meet me at this restaurant in my family. And they said, okay. And I said, I'm putting all of my stuff in storage and I'm leaving the country and I'm going to go live in Thailand.
Nice. Wow.
And I'm like, what the heck is this? I don't get it.
What existential crisis are you dealing with now, Jason?
I was dealing with one. And at the time I was like, well, I'm going to go and learn something that at the time my body is only going to be able to do for so long. So I moved to Thailand and started studying the art of Muay Thai, which is the art of 8 limbs, which is basically like kickboxing on steroids.
Cool.
And so I lived there. And as I was living there, I trained. And then I started fighting in the stadium. And so it was really cool to be able to fight an art that I love. I have a martial arts background even before that, but real fighting is much different than, like points and things like that. It's much different. Plus it's full contact. It's a pretty nasty sport. But what I learned doing that was that density muscle was so powerful. And density muscle, when you've got muscle that it can be used, is actual applicable muscle. You'd want to do things. I said, well, that's kind of cool. So then I started spending time with a guy named Tobias. He was a monk. And I started to learn a little bit about meditation. I started to understand about the power of our mind and some things that we could do. So, okay, that's cool. So I added that little thing to my repertoire. And then as I left there, I said, well, I'm not done traveling. So I moved to the Philippines and I moved to India and I started studying because I built some software, but I wanted to understand the culture from people in India and the culture in the Philippines, because I valued the asset as the years had gone, less expensive labor, but also some quality if you find good relationships. And so I came back and I had my agency going and I was like, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and find maybe a coach for myself, someone that can kind of just get me moving in the right direction. And then also, maybe some courses. And so I started to kind of look at all of them and I found a problem. And what I started to realize was that over 90%, 95% of people that start these courses and programs and coaching programs, they're not finishing them. And I was like, wait a minute, what's the issue here? And I went, people are not in alignment. They're not having fun. They're not doing anything like work hard, play hard. And we're falling apart in our houses. And I'm like, I think I can change this. And so what I did is the evolution had brought it through. It developed a thing called the Move 30, the Entrepreneurial Performance System. And what I do is I utilize physical from my time that I spent fighting Muay Thai, mindset, which is what I connect with my time with Tobias, it's any time with the monk, and then a personal business system, which has to do with consistency and repetition. And when I started to deploy that, I started working with like 100+ entrepreneurs and started to get them doing a routine. And now you started seeing momentum from people. They started enjoying themselves. They started seeing actionable things. And so instead of getting put out in a boat with a bunch of information, because I can have a lot of information, I've done a lot of shit.
Yeah.
But if you don't have an action plan to get back to the shore, you're just out in a boat with a bunch of shit. And so I wanted to develop something that would get you back as a business owner, have you physically feel strong, mentally confident, and then have you create consistency and discipline. And so that's kind of the long story on how I got here. So I totally vomited. So now you can ask questions, but that's the story.
I love it though, Jason. I love it. It's a great path. I love how you kind of, sometimes you got to remove yourself from, your upbringing and the place you kind of like, built some roots to kind of get new perspective. And, I want to kind of go back to that. Like, what are some of the big perspectives you got that maybe the epiphanies while you were outside the country in a different place, learning different things, eyes wide open? Like, what are some of the big epiphanies or moments, turning moments that kind of, hit you while you were outside the country, I guess, or outside of your regular routine?
If you travel, you get to meet people that you might not meet. But here's the cool thing. This is like the coolest of it all. Number one, it's humbling. And then I'm from the US and in San Diego, and then, people, Canada, things like that. Usually that's my demographic, UK, things like that. But when you look at that, when you're in the US, we have so many different cultures. And so when I meet somebody that says, oh, my grandmother is from Pune in India, or, hey, in Clark City in the Philippines, that's where my grandfather is, or something. And then eventually I'm like, oh, wow, like I have a connection with you. And then from there, we can do other things. So I found one of the most powerful things about traveling was being able to connect with other people that have history in their culture. That's and cool. Then that I have an understanding of where they come from, because that changes everything.
Yeah.
So if I understand where you're coming from, then I can take a minute to kind of understand the backstory of what you might come and talk to me about, because there's always more behind it, right?
Yeah, of course, of course.
So I learned a lot about that.
No, that's really cool. That's really cool. So again, so you started your new company. This is now more of a coaching and consulting. Maybe tell us a little bit more about what you're doing now. Let's kind of dive into your existing venture. Yeah. Let's talk a bit more about let's just focus there. Like where did you start that? Yeah. And, what are you doing for who?
Yeah. So I work with entrepreneurs that are usually at the place they're doing at least 5 or 10 grand a month, and then they're looking to scale. And the thing that I think, as I went back and looked at each one of those avenues, every single business has a set of energy that's going inside of it. And, Elon Musk, or you look at, and then, sometimes it's like woo woo or whatever, but this stuff kind of I think you maybe have seen this too with other business. The higher up in business you go, the more woo woo it gets. Have you noticed that?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
You look at like Steve Jobs, and it's like, look at all the stuff he did. Then he goes to India to like study meditation. He's like, this evolution takes you back to realize this is it, is that we're just energy.
Yeah. You see that a lot with Jack Dorsey when he built Twitter. He went from like a tech guy to, a guy with a beard that didn't talk for a month in Mongolia or something. But you're right. It's you kind of you see a lot of billionaires go full circle.
What's Mark Zuckerberg doing? Have you seen him do his fighting thing on the Oculus?
No, I haven't. I haven't seen that one.
He's training MMA and jiu-jitsu now. So it comes back to the core of, we want to do things.
Yeah.
And I find the problem, this is where I get passionate, is that I know that I came from an era where we used to get on the boats and we wakeboard and we skateboard. And I know that sounds like extreme sports, but you also could play volleyball. You can also rock climb. You can also go run a marathon. There's a lot to who we are, not just our business. And that's really where we're trying to go. Mm-hmm. And so what I found was that through kind of over and over and over again, was that to get in alignment, we need to have these small micro actions every single day that will tip the movement forward. Mm-hmm. So for example, if I only did a 7-minute meditation, people be like, oh, that's all 7 minutes. It's like, you should do 20 minutes. I'm doing it as the tool. I'm using it as a tool. I'm not trying. Trust me, you can end up in some weird places if you follow meditation too far. You end up, doing mushrooms and hanging out. You're like, what am I doing here? So, meditation can take you places, but if you use it as a tool, it's becoming scientifically proven that it helps us clear things. And as business owners, we're just a wreck. I mean, let's get real. We're going to hang up on this call. We're super excited. We bring the energy, hang it up, and then what?
Where does it go?
It's silent. There's nothing going on. We are living like this. And so what I found is that if I could create something that allows you to look through, I call it opening, open, opening the door to your business battlefield. And the reality is that you have to be able to walk through your business in your mind. And if you can't, then it's not going to be clear to your customer.
100%, right? Your vision has to be, you have to have a vision, right? You have to know where you're
Got to.
going in more than, the next month. You got to think a bit further out and have that vision. So yeah, I agree with that.
And then on a physical side, we're sitting here and we're doing all these things, but when we actually take care of ourselves and physically, especially men, when I get men to do some push-ups and increase this area, I always say it's the gorilla. What, fool? What? But what happens is the way you sit, the way you appear, you come across a little different. You present yourself differently. And so what I found is that people, this is not a workout program, but if I can just get you to commit to some small things like 30 push-ups a day. But what if I even told you just do 10 at a time? What I find is that over 30 days, that micro muscle starts to get a little better. And then the mind says, I want to do more shit.
100%.
Then here's the full circle. You ready? I want to do more shit. I better get my work done so I can go play.
Cool.
And once I started locking that in, people are now getting the triggers that we would get. And that was what? Get off work. Now I'm going to go see my friends and hang out. But that's not happening because we're just sitting here.
Yeah.
And so if I can increase that, people want to do more things. On a business side, what is the thing that moves the thing? We need to identify what was the last thing that was successful for you. Yeah. And if not, we need to find a strategy. Either it's getting more customers or getting more testimonials that'll allow you to earn, learn, or pivot. So what you do, or what we do, is we sit down and create that action plan. And then I know that action plan daily will give you the answers to move forward.
Cool. Yeah.
Because you can be given a bunch of information, but if you don't feel it yourself, you don't get it. It doesn't make sense.
So, how do you work with your clients then? So if these are big endeavors, taking these kinds of things on and helping people transform. So how do you typically work with someone? So if you bring on a new client, do you do group coaching? Do you do one-on-one? Like how does an engagement kind of look like from a business model perspective? Like how do you arrange those engagements?
Yeah, perfectly fine. So what I do is, and you can go to moved30 and then I also have moved moved.io. I have a podcast as well, which is super cool.
Very cool.
But the way that it works is that we sit down, and I do a lower tier so we can just kind of get to know each other. And then I do one-on-one coaching. But what I do is I look at those three pillars. I look at physical, I look at mindset, and then I look at your personal business system. And in our first onboarding, what I do is I sit down with you and we develop those three areas, and each one of them has action plans. From there, I create and design a cool, we call it our Move 30 calendar, and you can get one for your iPad, get one for your phone, and you're going to get one for printed out if you would like. And what you're responsible for is to take those actions every single day. As you take those actions, if you're in my weekly group call, then you meet up for accountability. But I also will go over sales, I'll go over marketing, and I'll go through those strategies, because if a boat is in motion, it's a lot easier to kind of go like this.
Yeah.
What happens is nobody's moving. And so it's very hard to get people to go. So when I put a physical side, a mindset side, the business side gets correlated with, I did my 10 push-ups. I also have to do my business stuff. And then when you do that starts to come together, you then starts to peak. And now you're like, man, I feel good. I'm getting clarity. And now I know what my next action is. And now you're not stuck anymore.
That's brilliant. I like that. I think that whole concept of, you get small actions lead to larger actions, right? I really get that. And I think that's a very valuable tool that you're teaching. What are you finding a lot of your clients, like these entrepreneurs that are coming to you, what are you finding as their kind of like their main obstacle, the blocker? What's kind of like like you said, like they're having success. They're making 5,000 a month or more. You're saying, like, what are the typical blockers that you're seeing, and how are you helping them kind of overcome them? I guess it's probably a lot with your system that you're talking about, but let's
Yeah.
dive into, what are those obstacles you're seeing?
The biggest issue is you don't have data. I mean, if we make this down to the core, if we just cut this to the core,
Mm-hmm.
and I say, you as a business owner have to perform, and you don't have any data to look back on to adjust. And the majority of us that are in this business, we are inconsistent because we are the system in the beginning.
Yeah. It's that whole
And
adage
so
of like working in your business versus on your business, I think,
I can give you a great example. Lewis is a great guy. He's like one of my best students. So I'll share his story because
sure.
he's cool. And it's a great story. He started with me. He was doing like 120 grand the year before or so. And he was like, look, I'm just not inconsistent. He basically was like, look, I'm doing 20 grand a month, but I'm stuck in the mud.
Yeah.
I was like, okay. So what we did is we developed a physical side. We said, look, I just want you to take these micro actions. You're not responsible to get massively in shape. Our goal is to find out what entrepreneur strong is. That means how good a shape do you need to be in to run your business? If you want vanity, let's go do that. If you want to do CrossFit, let's do that. But let's solve this to make you perform as a business owner. Let's not treat you like an athlete.
I really like that. That's a neat concept.
So if I treat you that way, then I just need to get your baseline on the physical side about 20%.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're not spraining muscles. We're not hurting our knees or none of that shit. And I use the analogy. I use the analogy of if you were to walk up a hill and it was going all the way up the top of the hill, and at the top you would lean over and you'd start like you'd lean over on your knees and you'd probably be like, I'm out of shape. But when you study muscle, that's not true because the distance was so short. The truth was that your muscles were going, give me some oxygen because you don't ever use them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You don't need to have to run a marathon to be able to be in shape, to be physically strong as a business owner. So I don't look at this as a workout program. I look at it as a baseline. We have to live at just this.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at that and you look at also the business side, those repeated processes over and over again took Lewis from 20 grand to the next month. We did 42 grand the second month.
Wow. Hey, exactly. That's amazing.
We identified that he, as his web business, had done these surveys over and over again. And that was his entry into the customer. And I said, we need to do these every single day for 30 days. Now, where did I come in? Why are you trying to change? Mm-hmm. Oh, I want to try this. Yeah. No. We committed to this and I can see it. You're emotionally wanting to let go. I'm not going to let you.
Yeah. I find that so many people are like that, right? The shiny object syndrome. That. Yeah, we're all like that, right? I guess that's why coaches work so well, right? Because it's kind of like you're that non-emotional, bias, unbiased kind of partner, So
I also think, and of course, there's amazing coaches out there. The thing that I think I bring to different is that I also am a fighting coach. I've trained fighters in the ring. Yeah. And when you make the wrong move, you get knocked out. There's consequences. Mm-hmm. So when I coach, I look at it in 3 different ways. I go, do you see how I'm showing it to you? Yes. Let's do it together. Now you do it on your own.
That's cool. Yeah.
That allows you to roll with me.
Yeah.
And then you can get my cadence. Then you control my cadence. Because I live this life. This is how I live.
Yeah.
So you roll my cadence. The thing that makes this difference is, if you noticed, I didn't say, what can you do? I'm going to ask you, what will you do? Mm-hmm. So the numbers that we usually come to an agreement on are many times half of what you tell me.
Yeah.
Because I get me, so I get you. And so in that case, what happened is that Luis has generated the energy. We recognized that physically it was on him because he had to do all that shit. That's a lot of work.
Boom, yeah, boom, of course. Boom. Yeah.
I said, okay, for the next 30 days, we're going to have you do that. But now we're going to start looking for somebody, but we can't get off the throttle. And he's like, oh man. I was like, can't get off the throttle.
Got to keep going.
Replace what? The business energy that he was putting out. Now we hire someone to handle that. Now he can take his energy, remove it, and then go find another repeated process so that he can then fill his pipeline. Lewis is now on the physical side. He's now running a half marathons, literally out of nowhere, got him physically just wanting to do more. He now does breath work. He does meditation. And we started at 120 grand. We're going to break $1 million in a year.
Oh, it's amazing, right? And all going back to the fundamentals, right? It's all like,
That's all it was.
yeah.
It's not all it was.
Yeah.
It's how it's how it was said. It was the commitment that we agreed upon. And it wasn't out of the realm where you felt like you wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
I want to put you in a position you just feel like an asshole if you don't do 10 squats.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm literally an asshole. You know, if you can.
How long was your engagement with them? How long did you kind of work with that client as you kind
of... client he's still a client of mine. I mean, he's
there you go.
With me. Yeah.
Excellent. That's good. So that kind of pulls into, so like, what kind of engagements do you typically work with? Do you sell
most of my calls,
yearly kind of engagements?
Most of my calls. Yeah. So I do a one-on-one program. I do three different positions, and I guess seems like cool. We're having fun, right? I'll vomit a little bit on where the business is going.
Sure.
So the entry is into our moved Entrepreneurial Performance Move 30 system. I have a program right now. You put it in there. If you remind me, it's like $997. It's one time. I build the whole thing out for you. You get to come and hang out 4 times every Tuesday for a month. I also bring in a guest masterclass speaker every single month.
Cool.
So this could be in somebody that moves you forward in TikTok. This could be somebody that moves you forward in, branding. This could be somebody in getting attention. So again, it's all about momentum, right?
Yeah.
Then what you do is you get an accountability calendar. Through that process, if you have a couple questions, you can hit me up on Voxer or something. I just keep you moving, But I also we do shirts. So it goes back to my core kind of, fashion stuff, but I do a shirt every month. And then from there, you come to each one of the classes. And then from there, if you want to go to my one-on-one, I do a 90-day program. And then in that 90-day program, we focus on, I don't like to tell you what we're going to do. I want to know what your goal is. And then we're going to break it down, each little piece, and we're going to get there in 90 days. Then I have a bigger program, and that program it's a minimum of 4 months. You sign up, and I do a commitment that I come and will visit you for 3 days. And so I'll hang out with you at your place for 3 days. And what I do in those 3 days is I do an entire 3-day seminar with you with a physical side. We'll do some meditation together. And then we'll also do some business planning going through. And then by the time you're done with that, and then I'll share this with anybody that's on here. If you have a coaching program or you have anything that you help people, this was probably one of my biggest things that I think have my customers coming back is that at every single call, I say these exact words. Did you get enough value? And I wait because I'm not going to get off the call because we're going to figure this out. And the next one is, do you know what to do next? By putting those 2 questions in, it opened up this, hey, I'm confused. I don't really know. And then if you don't, then let's talk. But if you do, you're responsible.
Yeah. Get to work, right? That's great though, Jason. That last bit of check-in, totally like for you, as you want to improve your, services and your delivery, you're getting a chance to be like, hey, did you get value from this? And if not, like, tell me where it was lacking. And then you're right, like putting it back on them, like making sure they understood. I think that's a really, really good approach to just kind of closing things off and understanding, who needs to do what next. Cause you're right. I can tell you like to talk. You got lots of things to say and lots of value to provide. And I think sometimes that's overwhelming to some people, to just take it in, firsthand. So it's good to check in and ask back. So,
well, you don't. And in anything, I mean, a little pro tip, the reality is that things happen in certain days. So I always tell people, wait till the 23rd day. They're like, what are you talking about? I said, just wait. And it's like, oh, and then all of a sudden, right around 23, 24, I tell them, you're going to want to do more. And I'm like, what do you mean? I said, your muscle, just a little bit of getting that going, you're going to feel like, man, I want to play some basketball. You're going to want to do more.
Yeah.
So let your body do it, you know? And then when you combine them all, I had a guy say it was like, it's like putting a blanket on him. He's like, I felt like this Move 30 was like, put a blanket on me. I knew what to do next. So, but it's cool. It's a different approach. And I felt that there was a problem to be solved.
Yeah. It sounds like an amazing program, and we'll link it down below. People can check it out and things like that. I want to go back to you're running this business, so we talked a bit about your clients and things like that. But there's also, you need to get clients, you need to manage your systems and all these things. And so how do you kind of juggle all of the priorities that come between working with your clients and then working on your business? And
Yeah.
Because I think with coaching, it's a bit hard. You are working in your business because a lot of times you're the product, right? You're working with them. You got to bring your time and energy, to each and every one of those. But at the same time, if you run out of clients, how do you keep the machine kind of operating? Let's talk a bit about that.
There's a couple different ways of entry, and this is a really good question. And I know I've talked about kind of my Move 30, but I want to make sure I bring some cool value to this too. Like I want everybody to be like, oh, that left and this is cool. So let's talk about that for a minute. Let's talk about barrier of entry. And this is even something, I'll even talk about it right now, that I just discovered as I went through this process. I came from, and maybe there's some people that are, I don't know, the demographic, I would say from like 32, 30, mid 30s, maybe. We really came from the era of the news. I mean, we really came from television was what? That's your 15 seconds of fame or whatever the heck it is, right?
Yeah.
There's your 15. And it's like, hey, if you butchered your 15 seconds of fame, man, you're like, you were on television and you had a booger, it's like, no,
It's over.
It's over. So, but when you look at our era, we have to be able to like let that go. We got to realize that, there's only we see everybody out there, everything's kind of in that scenario. And so as I started to do some research, this is actually long ago. And sometimes, I don't know about yourself, but in business, you're like, why didn't I see the $1 million right in front of me? Like I didn't even, it was right there. I don't know if you've been in any of those scenarios, like, that's all I had to do.
That's it.
That's all
Yes.
I did. You idiot. I love Kevin Hart, and he's always like, I wasn't ready. He tells this skit. He's always like, I wasn't ready.
I know, familiar.
I wasn't ready. So when you look at, the entire relationship that you have, one thing that I found was that every one of my customers, this is a really good one. Every one of my customers that spent the most amount of money on me, are you ready for it? This one's a pro tip. I sent them an introduction video with things that we may have in common.
Interesting.
And the moment that I did that, it took me from one area to the next. And I'll kind of use this correlation. I was sold cars when I was younger, and so closing became like, the fantasy of an 18-year-old kid. How could I close them?
Yeah.
And when you're out on the lot, there's a discussion that happens by the car. There's a different discussion that happens when you're at the desk.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why you don't talk about money by the car. You sit them down next to the desk. So when I started to think through these processes, and I'm like, Jason, I'm sharing this thing that everybody that goes through my system, they like it. It's just because they do the work. It's not whatever. Obviously I have many failures to get here. So, but when you look at that, I looked back and I went, that was the break. They got to meet me. They got to see some things into my life. What was I about? What do I do? And after I saw that, the rapport was literally hundreds of percentage greater.
Excellent.
Because then they're like, oh yeah, I love to cook too.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I like guitar. And now I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about guitar. And so if you can open up somehow where customers can come in, get to see you talking a little bit, have some points that you do, you naturally only have the ability to call upon problems that you have, you only have so many people you can remember.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you can put yourself in the car example, put yourself in another situation away from everybody else. Facebook has all these people. If I take them to a video and introduce myself, I have moved them to a different part of the conversation, different mental space. If I can get them to see it, view it, we get along great. Now I'm your friend. I don't talk about business. I talk about, getting punched in the face or something. It has nothing to do with it. And then I just hook it in there at the end. Oh yeah, this is kind of what I do. And then from there, relationships get mature.
Do you send the same video, or do you basically send a personalized video that's a similar kind of script, or what do you do?
Yes.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. Every once in a while you'll get people and they're like, whoa, it's not a personal video. I'm like, at that point, if you get that and you do it and people are like, why don't you send a personal video? It's like, there's got to be boundaries in my life. I'm not going to send you a picture in my bedroom. So,
Totally.
Give me a little bit of slack that I'm trying. And I'm not bullshitting. It literally changed the trajectory of the relationships I have with my customers.
Yeah. I can imagine, right? Like if you look at most lead generation, like again, adding that little personalization of video, like you said, you're right. Like 1% of people do that, 99% of lead gen, it's all about trying to just like volume and simple and, over templated, I guess,
we have a rule in my team. If they haven't seen my introduction video, there's no appointment.
Oh, that's excellent. Well, there you go. That kind of gives a bit of a gatekeeper to get the right people in the room, right? So you're not wasting your time talking to people that just don't connect. So it makes sense.
And I know that that's a point where I can get them to buy in.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Right. It's you're if they're going to go from that to, if they're still interested after that, you've already got them saying yes. So it's good.
Yeah. And the thing I would share that if anybody does this, and I would honestly say do it. I try to keep like these little things, I keep them in my group, but I'm like, this is just too good. Like you can literally do that and change the way that the relationships are. And then from there, you start creating a community from there. Mm-hmm. Because one of the things that I continue to learn as well is that just because they don't want it now, and I've sold a lot of shit in my life, and we come back to the fundamentals. Just because they don't want it now doesn't mean they don't want it later.
Oh, it's so true. I hear this so much. I hear this so much in email marketing and copywriters, right? I've heard a million stories of like, oh, I've been receiving your newsletter for a year and I never bought anything from you. And then I finally had the problem and I was like, you were the top of mind, and I hear so many stories like that, so that's the community building. And I'm here, I still have the same values. I still have the same backstory and I'm still, solving the same problem. Right. And you're right. You got to always be thinking long-term. So that's a really good thing. Do you operate your business on your own? Like, do you do all your web development?
No, I have a team.
Or do you have a team that helps you with all that, keeps all that in order?
Yeah. I've had a right-hand guy for probably, what does he work for me? 9 years.
Oh, wonderful. That helps a lot. That's great.
And you know what it is? And he's amazing. Norwin, if you ever catch this, he's such a great guy. But it's through the evolution that you're going to go through. If you can find somebody that, will work with you or something like that. And as a CEO or kind of like an executive assistant that has a lot of technical skills. Mm-hmm. So what ends up happening is that I'll be in a scenario and be like, hey, I don't understand that. Then you got two heads trying to figure it out.
100%. Yeah.
But I have an editing team, a design, these are all in-house guys. I have an outreach team. But now that I've had this team for so long, we've had to pivot together kind of in a way, some of these things, which is a plus. But it's not always easy to pivot a team. It's not always easy at all. Yeah. I actually have a course. It's called Outsourcing Your Biz. And I talk about culturally being able to keep a team together. Mm-hmm. And so I go through, if you have someone in India and the Philippines, I talk in length about how to keep them together, who to hire, who not to hire, cultural things that'll put you in the dirt, cultural things that you want to take advantage of. And so I kind of go over those things because there's a lot of value in it. There's a lot of value in world rural labor or rural team unity.
Yeah, 100%. That's amazing. I'm going to wrap us up here. I got one last question for you, more or less kind of for the people that are new in this game, in this entrepreneur game. What is that kind of one piece of advice you would give them, if they're starting and, you know, they want to start their own entrepreneur venture, something similar to maybe like yours or coaching, just, what's that kind of hardcore advice, to the new people that are really trying to start and grow?
So two things that I would say. One is that when we try to start something, and I'm victim to this, there's a visionary idea. There's a lot of like big goals and visions. And maybe you have this, like, I would like to do this grandiose thing. And this is something I continue to learn. And so here's what I'm going to tell you that I think is probably the most valuable thing. If you're going to start something from the bottom, kind of like how I've done Moved, you have to educate everybody because they have to know who you are, and then they have to buy the product because of the education. If you were to find something that is already being done, like when I sold sunglasses, the product has already been wrapped around the community knowing what it is. So your traffic to the product and the problem you're solving, the community has already agreed it's an issue. So when you're finding things, if you're going to start out, pay attention to how much you're going to have to grow, or can you get into something that already has an audience? Because that will be the deciding factor of how fast you move forward. When I was in the e-commerce business, the reason why sunglasses did so well for me is because people were already buying sunglasses.
Totally, right? Go to the market that exists instead of trying to create a market,
Correct. And I think I've tried to create a market in this Moved product. So I've learned kind of the differences. But as I look at other companies and look at other things, two things that you can do if you want speed, if you want to get there quicker, find something that's already being done, make it better, go after the audience. Or two, you don't, and then you have to collectively bring them together, build them to know who you are, then put offers in front of them. So there's two routes to that. But the final thing I would say, find these repeated things, micro actions, commit to them for 30 days, then look back on what worked and what didn't. If you don't do that, then you're going to be all over the place, period.
Wonderful advice. I love that, Jason. Where can people find you? We're going to put it down below in the description and all that, but where can they find you? Where's the best place to get in contact with you if they're interested in your program or just want to follow you on social? Where can they find you?
Let's get to know each other. You can go to Jason Starbuck on Facebook. I'm sure you'll see me there. You can also go on Instagram, Jason G Starbuck. And then also you can go to Moved, MOVD.io. There's the podcast there. There's the Move 30 there. I've got some shirts and stuff. So it's been really fun, man. I really appreciate you doing this.
Yeah, no, thanks for coming on. I love these conversations. It's so great to see, how you've evolved your business and where you're going, and now how you're, creating massive impact for other entrepreneurs. I just love that. People that are propping up entrepreneurs, I just have an extra higher self-esteem for them. They're just, they're trying to change the world, and I fit you into that category. And I, really appreciate, what you're doing and, what you shared with us today. So again, thanks for coming on. Thanks for watching. To everybody here, please, subscribe, like this video, share it, and, we'll definitely see you on the next one. So thanks again, Jason. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you again. Take care.